My name is Rosa Klingensmith, and I'm 24 years old. 6 months ago, my father died of a sudden heart attack at only 47. I remember standing beside his hospital bed, still in my office clothes, unable to believe that the man who used to text me dad jokes every morning was just gone. When the lawyer read his will, I learned he had left me the house he'd bought just a few years earlier, a quiet two-story place in a leafy suburb, painted cream with blue shutters he'd insisted on because every house needs its own smile. I moved in 3 months ago. The first night I slept on a mattress on the floor surrounded by boxes and the faint smell of my father's aftershave still clinging to the curtains. Every creak in the hallway felt like him walking around checking the locks. The silence wasn't comforting. It was heavy, like grief had taken up residence with me. Still, I tried to build something resembling peace. I planted his favorite orchids near the porch, framed his old photographs, and told myself I'd make this house my home. I wanted to honor him, to live a life that would have made him proud. Then came the call. It was a Thursday evening. Rain whispered against the windows as I reheated leftovers. My phone buzzed Mom. We hadn't been especially close since the divorce. She had remarried and started a new family years ago, and though we spoke occasionally, the warmth between us had thinned to polite formality. "Hi, Mom," I said, expecting a brief check-in. But her voice cracked on the first word. "Rosa, we need your help." She explained everything in broken sentences, how her husband James had been laid off, when his company downsized, how their savings had dried up, how they'd been living in a cheap motel for 2 weeks and were about to be thrown out. I went silent. It wasn't that I didn't care, it was that I did care too much. I could already feel the shape of the decision pressing against me. "Could we stay with you for a while?" she finally asked. I stared at the wall. A framed photo of Dad smiled back him, holding a fishing rod, his hand on my shoulder. My throat tightened. "Just until things get better," she added quickly. "The kids are scared. I don't know what else to do." I could hear my half-sister Donna in the background asking for dinner and my 10-year-old half-brother Tuan coughing softly. Something inside me caved. "Okay," I said. "You can come." "Thank you," she breathed out. Relief flooded her tone so suddenly it almost hurt to hear. "You don't know how much this means." After we hung up, I sat there for a long time. The sound of rain against the window was steady, like a ticking clock counting down to something I couldn't yet name. They arrived the next evening in a beat-up gray sedan. When I opened the door, I was met with exhaustion disguised as gratitude. My mother looked smaller than I remembered, her hair tied carelessly, her eyes darting around the entryway as though measuring it. "This place is beautiful," she murmured, stepping in. "You did well, Rosa." I didn't, I wanted to say. Dad did. But instead I smiled politely and helped her carry in the bags. James followed behind, dragging 2 suitcases and avoiding eye contact. "Appreciate this," he muttered, though his tone lacked warmth. The kids burst through the doorway, chattering in excitement. Donna immediately ran to the staircase, shouting, "I call the room with the big window." I let them have it. I gave my mom and James the master bedroom, keeping the smaller guest room for myself. I told myself it was temporary just until he found another job. That night, as they settled in the house, felt crowded. Every door seemed to close louder. Every footstep lingered longer. My father's once quiet home had filled with new voices, laughter, and the faint scent of someone else's cooking. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to muffled laughter down the hall. I should have felt comforted by the sound of family. Instead, I felt a quiet unease. The next few days passed in an odd rhythm. I went to work, came home, and found someone always in the kitchen, the TV always on. My stepfather claimed to be sending out resumes, but I mostly saw him stretched on the couch, watching soccer. Mom tried to help. She'd cook tidy up, but her energy felt different. She moved through the house like someone reclaiming something lost, not borrowing it. One evening, I came home early and found her standing in the hallway, running her fingers along the photo frames. She stopped at one picture of Dad and me on my college graduation day. "You two always had a special bond," she said softly. "He believed in me," I replied. She nodded, but her eyes lingered on the photo longer than I liked. "You know I supported him when he had nothing," she murmured, "before he became successful." It was such an odd thing to say that I just smiled awkwardly and changed the subject. That weekend, while I was cleaning the porch, James wandered out with a cigarette between his fingers. "You've got a nice place here," he said, squinting at the sky. "Thanks," I replied curtly. "Must have been worth a lot. Houses like this don't come cheap." I shrugged. Dad worked hard for it. He gave a low whistle. "Guess it runs in the family." The way he said it made my skin crawl. When I went back inside later, Mom was in the living room flipping through the property documents I kept in a drawer. "Mom," I said slowly, "why are you going through my files?" She blinked, surprised, then smiled too quickly. "Oh, I was just checking the mortgage papers. Wanted to make sure everything's paid off." I didn't know what to say. My father's warning from years ago echoed in my mind. Kindness without boundaries will cost you peace. That night, I dreamt of my father standing on the front steps, shaking his head, the house behind him glowing in sunset light. When I asked him what was wrong, he said, "You're letting ghosts move in Rosa." I woke up with my heart racing. It's been 3 weeks since they moved in. The laughter of the kids has faded into background noise. My stepfather still hasn't found a job, and my mother's gratitude has turned into subtle entitlement comments about our house. Her tone casual but sharp enough to cut. I tell myself to stay calm. They're family. Families go through hard times. But sometimes when I pass the living room and see James napping on the couch surrounded by crumbs, or when I hear my mother whispering on the phone about stability and ownership, I feel something shift inside me, like the floorboards of this house are warning me, creaking under the weight of something heavy and invisible. And deep down I know this. They're not planning to leave. A month had passed since my mother's family moved in. What was meant to be an act of kindness had quietly transformed into a constant test of patience. Every morning began the same. James on the couch with his laptop open, but untouched, his cigarette burning down in the ashtray as soccer commentary filled the living room. Donna and Tuan would leave their breakfast half-eaten while their cartoons blared on the TV. And my mother, she would hum in the kitchen, making herself comfortable in the role of homemaker, as if she had lived here her whole life. My father's house, my house had turned into something unrecognizable. At first, I kept my irritation buried. They're struggling, I told myself. Don't make them feel unwanted. But patience is like water. No matter how deep the well, it eventually runs dry. One evening after work, I came home to find the dining table covered in clutter bills, juice boxes, and my work documents that someone had moved from my study. "Mom," I said, trying to sound calm, "please don't touch my folders again. They have client information." She looked up from where she was peeling fruit. "I just needed space for dinner. You shouldn't leave things lying around, sweetheart." I wasn't lying them around. They were in my study, I corrected gently. Her eyes flicked up sharp. "Don't talk to me like I'm a stranger in this house." I froze. The way she said this house sent a quiet alarm through my chest. I didn't mean that, I said, forcing a small smile. "I just never mind." James chuckled from the couch without looking away from the TV. "You young people and your privacy. Everything's a big deal these days." The casual disrespect hit harder than shouting ever could. That night, I lay awake replaying their words, the tone, the entitlement wrapped in politeness. My father had warned me once, there's a difference between helping and handing over. I was beginning to understand what he meant. Days blurred together. James still hadn't found a job. Each morning I'd hear the same excuse. It's a bad economy. Nobody's hiring. Yet his phone screen always showed football stats instead of job listings. When I hinted that I could connect him with a friend's company, he waved me off. "Too far," he said, "and too much stress for too little pay." Meanwhile, my mother grew oddly possessive of the space. She rearranged the living room furniture for better energy flow, replaced my father's framed photos with family pictures of her, James, and the kids, and even began referring to my father's study as our family room. It stung every time I walked past the empty frame where my dad's photo once hung. His absence felt heavier than ever. One Saturday morning, I decided to take back a little control. I woke early, made coffee, and started cleaning. It wasn't about the mess, it was about reclaiming something that still felt mine. As I was vacuuming, Donna ran in with a panicked look. "Mom says, don't clean the master bedroom." "They're still sleeping." I turned off the vacuum. It's almost 11 a.m. Before I could say more, my mother stormed out of the room, her robe tied loosely, her expression annoyed. "Why are you making noise so early?" "We barely slept." "I'm sorry," I said evenly, "but this is my only day off. I wanted to tidy up before noon." She crossed her arms. "You're acting like we're guests. We're family, Rosa. You don't have to treat us like we're intruding." The irony almost made me laugh. I swallowed it. "I never said you were intruding. I just want some boundaries, that's all." Her lips tightened. "Boundaries," she repeated slowly, as if the word itself offended her. "Maybe if your father had respected my boundaries, our marriage wouldn't have failed." That was the first time she'd brought him up like that, as if his memory was ammunition. I turned away, afraid that if I met her eyes, I'd say something I couldn't take back. That evening, I stood outside, watering the orchids I had planted for my father. James joined me, leaning against the porch railing. "You and your mom always were like fire and ice," he said casually, puffing smoke into the air. She means well, you know. I know, I replied quietly, though my tone said otherwise. He tapped his cigarette, flicking ash onto the flower bed. She just wants what's fair. She's been through a lot. I frowned. Fair. He shrugged. Your father left you this place, right? But she helped him build everything he had. Maybe she feels like some of it should have been hers. The words hit like a quiet punch to the gut. She never asked for this house, I said slowly. He gave a small, knowing smile. People don't always ask for what they think they deserve. Sometimes they just take it. He walked back inside, leaving the faint smell of tobacco and warning behind. That night, I opened the bottom drawer of my father's desk. The old documents were still there, title deeds, legal papers, letters from his lawyer. I ran my hand over the embossed seal, feeling the texture of something that was mine, something he had trusted me to protect. I sat there for a long time, staring at the papers, until the clock struck midnight. In the distance, I could hear my mother laughing in the living room, the sound blending with the hum of the television. It didn't sound like gratitude anymore. It sounded like comfort, like ownership. And deep inside, a cold certainty began to form. That was the first time I realized she wasn't planning to leave at all. It was a Thursday night when everything began to unravel. The air felt heavy that evening, the kind that carries thunder but doesn't rain. My mother had made dinner her usual sweet and sour fish, and for a moment it felt almost normal. Donna was doing her homework at the table, Tuan humming softly as he played with his toy cars. But there was something different about my mother. She kept glancing at James, her expression nervous but determined. They barely touched their food. When the kids finally went to their rooms, she looked at me and said quietly, "Rosa, can we talk? It's important." I nodded, though a quiet dread was already curling in my stomach. She folded her hands together on the table. "I spoke to a lawyer." Those 5 words froze me in place. She hesitated, her gaze sliding toward the family photo she'd hung on the wall, one I hadn't noticed before replacing my father's. "I found out that your father left this house to you. I don't think that's right." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. "What?" She straightened her back, her tone turning sharp, rehearsed. "I supported your father when he had nothing. I raised you while he built his career. This house, everything he had, was built on the sacrifices I made. It should have been mine." I couldn't breathe. The room felt suddenly smaller. "Mom, you're serious." Her jaw tensed. "I'm saying I've already filed a petition to contest the will." The sound of her words landed like glass breaking. James spoke up almost casually, as if this were just business. "You'll probably have to move out for a while, Rosa. Once it's settled, we'll figure out what's fair." Fair. The word echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. I stood slowly. "You're trying to take my house. The one Dad left me." Mom sighed, her voice trembling between justification and guilt. "I'm trying to take what's owed to me. You're young, you can start over. I can't." "I let you move in because you said you were homeless," I said, my voice cracking. "Because I wanted to help you." She flinched, but her pride didn't let her back down. "And you did help me. But this is bigger than gratitude. This is about what's rightfully mine." There was no scream in me, only a cold stillness that spread through my chest like frost. "I want you to start looking for a new place," she continued softly, as though she were offering advice, not betrayal. "You'll be served the papers soon. I didn't want you blindsided." I don't remember walking to my room that night. My body moved on instinct, my mind replaying every second since she'd arrived, every smile, every thank you, every moment I'd mistaken for reconciliation. My hands shook as I called Mr. Fan, my father's lawyer. He'd handled both the divorce and the will. When he picked up, his voice was warm, familiar. "Miss Klingensmith," he said kindly, "your father would be proud of you for taking care of that home." The moment I told him what my mother had done, his tone hardened. "She has no legal grounds. She already received $80,000 from the divorce, alimony, and settlement included. She signed a document relinquishing any claim to your father's future assets. So she can't take the house." "Not a chance," he said. "But she can make your life miserable trying." I pressed my hand to my forehead. "She said she's already filed the petition." He sighed. "Then she's acting out of desperation, not logic. My advice, stay calm. Don't let her emotional manipulation work on you." "Emotional manipulation," I repeated bitterly. "She's my mother." He was quiet for a long moment before saying softly, "Sometimes that's exactly why it works." That night I sat in my father's old study, staring at the blank wall where his portrait used to hang. I remembered how he used to call this place his sanctuary. I had laughed at him for using such a poetic word, but now I understood. I could almost hear his voice. "This house will protect you, Rosa, but only if you protect it first." Outside my window, I could hear the faint murmur of my mother and James talking in their room. The sound was muffled but constant. Planning. Plotting. A quiet fury rose in me, not the kind that explodes, but the kind that hardens like stone. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen and found my mother pouring coffee, acting as though nothing had happened. "Good morning," she said. I ignored the greeting. "You're contesting Dad's will, Mom." Her eyes flicked up sharply. "We talked about this last night." "I didn't agree to it." "I don't need your agreement," she said simply. Something inside me broke. "Well," I said, setting down my mug, "you don't need my house either. You can pack your things today." Her hand froze midair, coffee dripping from the spoon. "What did you just say?" "You're leaving, all of you." Her voice rose full of wounded disbelief. "You're kicking your own mother out." "Yes," I said, steady, "before you try to take what's mine." James stepped into the doorway, arms crossed. "You can't do that. We live here now." "This isn't your home," I said, my pulse pounding. "It's mine, legally and morally." Mom's face twisted, not in sadness, but in rage. "You're just like your father, cold, ungrateful." Maybe I said softly, but at least I'm not a liar. She flinched as if I had slapped her. The tension hung between us like smoke, thick and bitter. I turned and walked to my room, locking the door behind me before my voice could break. I called Mr. Fan again, my hands trembling. "She won't leave," I said. He sighed heavily. "Then you'll need to take action. File a trespassing report if necessary. You have every right to evict them." "Evict my own mother." The words tasted poisonous. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the hallway made me wonder if she was still awake, still plotting. The next morning, I made my decision. I would end this before it destroyed me completely. I waited until dawn, then walked to her room and knocked. She opened the door, eyes puffy from sleep confusion, turning to anger when she saw my suitcase beside me. "I'm done," I said quietly. "If you don't leave, I'll call the police." Her mouth fell open. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me." For a moment, I thought she might hit me. Instead, she stepped aside and slammed the door shut in my face. I stood there, shaking my father's words, echoing in my mind like a prayer. "Kindness without boundaries will cost you peace." That morning, I finally understood what peace was worth and what it would cost to keep it. That night, I stopped being her daughter and became her opponent. The day I called the police on my own mother, the silence afterward was louder than any argument we'd ever had. The morning I decided to end it was unnervingly calm. No storm, no drama, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the wall clock as the sky outside turned from blue to gold. I'd been awake all night. My mind replayed her words. "You'll have to move out, Rosa. The house should have been mine." Each repetition stripped away another layer of disbelief until only anger remained. I packed my resolve the same way I packed my dignity, quietly, efficiently, and without room for negotiation. It was just past 5 when I knocked on her bedroom door. The sound echoed down the hallway like a gunshot. "Mom," I said through the wood, "I need you to get up." There was no response at first, just shuffling a muffled whisper, then James's grumbling voice. When the door cracked open, she squinted at me, her hair messy, her voice irritated. "What is it now?" I inhaled sharply, steadying myself. "You need to pack your things. All of you. I'm not asking anymore." Her eyes widened, the sleep vanishing instantly. "Excuse me. I'm serious. You've made your intentions clear. You're contesting Dad's will. You're trying to take this house, so you can't live here." Her face hardened into something I barely recognized, a mix of fury and disbelief. "This house is mine," she snapped. "Your father stole years from me, and now you're doing the same." "Enough," I said, my voice trembling. "You can hate Dad all you want, but don't pretend this is about justice. It's about greed." Behind her, James appeared, yawning, scratching his neck. "You can't just throw us out, girl. We've got nowhere to go." "Not my problem," I said quietly. "You had 6 weeks." He smirked. "You think you can live here alone forever? You'll come crawling back." "Then I guess I'll crawl," I replied, "but not to you." I turned to leave, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. "Don't walk away from me," Mom shouted. "You're not evicting us, Rosa. I'll call my lawyer. You'll regret this." I paused at the end of the hallway. "Maybe I will," I said, turning to face her. "But I'll regret it less than living under the same roof as someone who'd stab me in the back and call it love." Her face twisted in rage. She slammed the door so hard, the frame shook. For hours, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone, my hands trembling. I'd never called the police before, not even for strangers, let alone family. When I finally dialed, my voice came out steady, detached, as though I were describing someone else's life. "Yes," I said. "I need officers to remove unauthorized occupants from my property." They arrived just before sunrise, 2 uniformed officers, polite but businesslike. When I opened the door, my mother was already waiting at the top of the stairs, her face flushed with fury. "What is this?" she demanded. I looked up at her, forcing myself not to cry. "You gave me no choice." James tried to argue, claiming it was a family misunderstanding. The officers remained professional, firm, but kind. "Sir, ma'am," one of them said, "you've been asked to vacate. This is a legal property transfer, and you're not listed as residents." My mother's voice cracked. "She's my daughter. You can't just let her—" "I'm her landlord right now," I cut in, my voice sharper than I intended. "And she's trespassing." It felt cruel, wrong, and yet necessary. Tuan began to cry, clutching Donna's hand as they stood by the doorway, confusion clouding their small faces. "Mom, what's happening?" Donna asked in a whisper. My mother looked at me with something almost animal in her eyes, rage mixed with heartbreak. "This is your sister's doing," she said bitterly. "She wants us on the street." My throat tightened. "Stop it," I whispered. "Don't do that to them." But she kept going. "You'll understand one day," she hissed, "when your own children turn against you." The officers asked them to gather their belongings. My mother refused to move, clutching the doorframe like it might save her. "Ma'am," one officer said gently, "please don't make this harder." And then she did something I'll never forget. She started to cry. Not the kind of cry that begs for forgiveness, but the kind that comes from being caught from losing control. Her shoulders shook, her face crumpled. For a brief moment, I saw not the manipulative woman who tried to take my home, but the mother who once braided my hair for school, who stayed up all night when I had fevers, who used to whisper, "You're my best thing," when she thought I was asleep. But that memory couldn't erase what she'd done. Within an hour, they were gone. The sound of the front door closing behind them was deafening. I stood in the living room, surrounded by silence, my body trembling from the adrenaline. The house felt bigger now, hollow, echoing with ghosts of arguments and broken trust. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, landing on the empty spot where their suitcases had been stacked. It should have felt like victory. It didn't. I didn't cry because they were gone. I cried because I'd had to make them go. Because somewhere deep inside, I still loved her, and that love now had nowhere to live. Days passed. No one came back, no one called. Then slowly the texts began. At first they were polite. "Mom, Rosa, we need to talk. I didn't mean for things to go this far." Then desperate. "Mom, please, the kids miss you. We're running out of money. Just for a few days until James finds a job." And then manipulative. "Mom, you've changed. Your father would be ashamed." Each message twisted something inside me, but I didn't reply. I couldn't. Every time I tried to type a response, I saw my father's handwriting on the envelope he'd left with his will. "To my daughter, protect what I gave you and protect yourself even more." He must have known this day would come. A week later, I found myself sitting on the porch at dusk, staring at the street where their car had driven away. The wind was soft, carrying the scent of my father's orchids. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something close to peace, a painful, fragile peace that came not from victory, but from survival. I whispered into the fading light, "I did what I had to, Dad." And though the wind didn't answer, the house did, creaking softly, like it understood. Even after I threw her out, I couldn't throw away the guilt. Guilt has a way of surviving the people who cause it. You think you've buried it, but it keeps breathing inside you. 2 weeks passed after the eviction. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt hollow. The first few nights I barely slept. I'd walk past the empty bedrooms and imagine the echoes, Donna's laughter, Tuan's footsteps on the stairs, my mother's soft hum when she cooked. Those sounds had annoyed me before. Now the silence mocked me. I told myself I'd done the right thing. I repeated it like a prayer. "She tried to steal your father's house. You protected what was his. What's yours?" But every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face as the police escorted her out. Not furious, not defiant, just broken. Even justice feels cruel when it's family. The first message came on a Sunday night. "Mom, we're okay. Kids are with me. Don't worry." I stared at it for a long time before locking my phone. No reply. The next day, another one. "Mom, the motel says we can't stay past Tuesday. Please, Rosa, just a few days." I didn't answer. By Thursday, she stopped texting. But someone else didn't. That night, as I sat rereading my father's old journal, my phone rang. The name on the screen froze me. James. For a moment, I considered letting it ring out. But curiosity, or maybe weakness, made me pick up. "Hello." His voice was low, strained. "Rosa, we need your help. Please don't hang up." I didn't speak. "We've run out of money," he continued. "I found a job lead. My brother lives 2 towns over. He said we can stay with him if we can get there. I just need some money for bus tickets." "Why not call your friends, your family?" He sighed. "We already did. No one's answering anymore." It was quiet for a while. I could hear muffled sounds behind him, Donna's small voice asking if they'd have dinner tonight. I closed my eyes. How much do you need? Not much, he said quickly, too quickly. Just enough for tickets. Maybe a bit for food. I'll pay you back as soon as I can. I almost laughed. The same man who'd watched TV all day while I worked was now promising repayment. But the bitterness in me couldn't outweigh the memory of those kids' tiny shoulders carrying adult fears. Send me the amount, I said. He exhaled in relief. Thank you, Rosa. Really, you're a good person. Good. That word didn't feel like a compliment. It felt like a curse. I sent the money, then spent the next few hours pacing the house, hating myself for feeling relieved. Was this forgiveness or just cowardice? Part of me hoped that would be the end of it, a clean transaction, a quiet goodbye. But later that evening, another message came. Mom, he told you, didn't he, about the tickets? Thank you. I didn't want to ask you myself. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Then another text minutes later. Mom, I know you hate me. I don't blame you. But if you want closure, come to the motel before we leave tomorrow. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. My chest tightened, torn between resentment and longing. Closure. The word was dangerous. It promised peace, but usually delivered confusion. I told myself I wouldn't go. I told myself I'd delete the message and move on. But the next morning, I found myself driving anyway. The motel was small and tired, the kind of place where people went to disappear. The sign buzzed faintly in the daylight, one of the neon letters flickering on and off. Room 27. I knocked once. James opened the door, looking thinner, older. She's inside, he said quietly. She's been waiting since morning. The room smelled of instant noodles and cheap air freshener. Donna and Tuan sat on the bed, watching cartoons on a small TV. When they saw me, Donna jumped up, hesitating before hugging me. I missed you, she whispered. Something in me cracked. I missed you too. James nodded toward the adjoining room. She's there. My mother sat by the window, staring out at the parking lot. Sunlight traced the outline of her shoulders, making her look frail, smaller than the woman who'd once ruled every room she entered. When she turned, her eyes were red. You came. I'm only here because you asked, I said. She nodded. That's fair. Silence stretched between us, the kind that carries years of unspoken things. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft. You were right to throw us out. The words hit me like cold water. I thought I was doing the right thing, she continued. I thought if I fought for that house, I could give your brother and sister security. I wasn't thinking about you. I was thinking about survival. Her voice trembled. I didn't mean to hurt you, Rosa. I just didn't know another way. I stared at her, unsure what to do with the sudden honesty. You didn't just hurt me, I said quietly. You made me hate you, and I don't like hating you. Her lips trembled into a smile that never reached her eyes. Then don't. Hate me less. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt fragile, like one wrong word could shatter it completely. Finally, I reached into my bag, pulled out a small envelope, and placed it on the table. There's some extra cash. For the kids. Don't ask me for more. She looked at it, but didn't touch it. You don't have to do this. I know, I said, but I can't stop caring either. For the first time in months, she looked me straight in the eyes. You have your father's heart, she whispered. Too big for your own good. Maybe, I said softly, but he also taught me when to close the door. I stood to leave. She rose halfway, then hesitated. Rosa, she said, her voice cracking. Will you ever forgive me? I paused at the door. I don't know, but I'll try. And for once, that felt like enough. Outside, the air was sharp and cold. I walked to my car, trying to breathe. Behind me, the motel curtains fluttered. I didn't look back. For all the wrongs between us, I couldn't erase the image of her sitting there, not the manipulative woman who had tried to take everything but a mother who had lost her way and was now too tired to pretend she hadn't. Driving home, I realized forgiveness isn't about what they deserve. It's about what you can live with. And I needed to live again. I thought giving her that money would end things. I was wrong. Some apologies don't heal you. They haunt you because they arrive after the damage can no longer be undone. The next day, I received a message from my mother. Just one line. Mom, thank you for coming. No requests, no guilt, no manipulation, just gratitude. It startled me more than any argument ever had. For weeks, I'd prepared myself to see her only as the woman who betrayed me, not as the mother who raised me. But that day at the motel had cracked something open, a door I thought I'd sealed forever. I wanted to move on. I wanted to forget. But memory doesn't obey logic. It stays. It lingers. That evening, I walked through my father's house, running my hand along the walls. The scent of him was fading, that mix of cedarwood and coffee. but the essence of him lingered in the way the house breathed. It was almost as if he'd been watching everything unfold, silent and patient, waiting for me to learn the lesson he'd always tried to teach me. You can love people and still not let them hurt you. I whispered into the empty living room, I tried, Dad. I really tried. 3 days later, I got another call, this time from James. She wants to see you again, he said hesitantly, just to talk before we leave for my brother's farm. She said she won't ask for anything. I almost refused, but a strange calm washed over me, the kind that comes when you've already lived through the worst. Where, I asked? The same place, room 27. When I arrived, the kids were outside sitting on the curb with paper cups of instant noodles. Donna waved when she saw me. Auntie Rosa, she shouted, running to me. Auntie, not sister. The distinction stung, but I didn't correct her. Inside, my mother was packing their few belongings. The walls were bare, the air smelled of cleaning spray. She turned when I stepped in. I didn't think you'd come, she said softly. I wasn't sure I would, I admitted. She smiled faintly. That makes two of us. She motioned for me to sit. On the table lay the untouched envelope I'd left behind days earlier. You didn't use it, I asked. I did, she said. Then I put it back. I wanted you to see that I'm not taking more than what's necessary. I nodded slowly, not sure what to make of that. For a long while, neither of us spoke. The hum of the old air conditioner filled the silence. Finally, she said I wanted to apologize again. Not for losing the house that was never mine to lose, but for losing you. I blinked, caught off guard. She continued, voice trembling. After your father and I divorced, I thought time would fix everything. I thought I could rebuild, start fresh, and someday you'd understand. But when life started falling apart again, I panicked. I looked at you stable, independent, living in the house he left, and I felt ashamed, like I'd failed twice. Once as a wife, once as a mother. Her words came like slow rain, heavy, reluctant cleansing. I told myself I deserved something from him, she whispered. From you. But the truth is, I was just scared. Scared of losing the last thing that tied me to him. Her eyes glistened. That house was my past. You were my future, and I almost destroyed both. I felt tears burn behind my eyelids. I wanted to stay angry. Anger was safe, predictable. But looking at her, I saw not a villain, but a woman swallowed by fear. I can't forget what you did, I said softly, but I don't want to carry the hate anymore. She reached across the table, her hand trembling. Then don't. Let it die here. For the first time in months, I took her hand. It was warm, fragile, smaller than I remembered. We sat like that, two women bound by blood and regret, holding on to something neither of us could name. The kids peeked through the doorway. Donna was clutching a drawing, a little house with 4 stick figures. She handed it to me shyly. That's you, she said, pointing to the tall one with long hair. You're smiling. I looked down at the picture, a crude, colorful world where everything was simple and everyone still loved each other. Thank you, sweetheart, I said, my voice cracking. Tuan ran up beside her. When we get to Uncle Fuck's farm, we'll have chickens. You can visit and feed them. I smiled. Maybe I will. The look in their eyes, hope untainted by adult mistakes, nearly broke me. I knelt down, hugging both of them. Be good to your mom, okay? Donna nodded seriously. We will. Promise. When I left the motel, the sun was setting behind the highway. The bus they were taking was parked nearby, its windows glowing orange. I stood at a distance and watched as they loaded their bags. My mother turned once, meeting my eyes through the glass. She didn't wave, didn't smile. She just pressed her palm against the window. I raised mine back. The bus pulled away slowly, carrying with it the family I had both lost and saved. That night I sat in my father's study again, the quiet pressing against me like a soft weight. I placed the drawing Donna gave me on his old desk. The little stick figure of me smiled up, surrounded by a family that existed only in crayons. I whispered, It's not perfect, Dad, but I think you'd still be proud. The air felt warmer somehow, as if the house once again had forgiven me for opening its doors. Forgiveness isn't a door you open once, it's one you keep unlocking every day. Some inherit houses, others inherit debts. What I inherited was silence and the choice of what to fill it with. It's been 6 weeks since the bus left. I still remember the sound of it fading down the road, a low, distant hum that felt like an ending. At first, I kept expecting the phone to ring, expecting one more message from her, angry or guilty or just lonely, but none came. The quiet that followed wasn't peaceful. It was unsettling, like the calm after a storm where you're still waiting to see what's left standing. The house creaked differently now. Some nights it sounded like it was breathing again. Other nights it echoed too much like the walls missed the noise. Maybe they did. Maybe I did too. I've been painting lately. Small things, the hallway, the shutters, the bedroom walls. The act itself feels cleansing. Every brushstroke pulls a little of the old energy away, replacing it with something lighter. The first room I repainted was my father's study. I moved the furniture back to how it was when he was alive. His chair by the window, the lamp angled toward the desk. His framed degree hung straight. I even brought back the old photo of him and me that Mom had taken down. When I set it on the shelf, I whispered, "You're home again." And for a brief, still moment, I swore the air changed, like the house exhaled after holding its breath too long. A week later, a letter arrived, not a text, not an email. A handwritten letter, postmarked from a small, rural town I had to look up on a map. It was from her. Rosa, we're at your uncle's farm now. The kids are doing well. Donna has started helping with the chickens. Tuan feeds the dogs every morning. It's not easy, but it's peaceful here. I think about you every day, about the way I lost you, and the way you still helped me when you had every right not to. I don't know if we'll ever be close again, but I hope someday when you walk through that house, you think of me with something kinder than anger. I won't ask for anything again. I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm sorry not for losing the house, but for forgetting what really mattered while trying to survive. Love, Mom. The ink was smudged in a few places like she'd cried while writing it. I folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the same envelope my father's will had come in. It felt fitting, one story ending where another began. Some evenings, when the sun hits the living room just right, the whole house glows. It's the same light that used to spill through when Dad was alive, when he'd sit with his guitar by the window, humming tunes from his youth. I imagine him now smiling, quiet, proud. Maybe he'd tell me I did the right thing. Maybe he'd tell me that love and self-respect aren't opposites. They're the same thing seen from different distances. I like to think he'd say, you protected the house, but more importantly, you protected yourself. I still talk to my mother, sometimes short calls every few weeks. We keep it simple updates about the kids, the weather, small talk that never touches the past. There's a strange comfort in that restraint. We're both learning that not every wound needs to be reopened to heal. Some just need time and distance. And though I can't forget what she did, I've stopped replaying it. That, I think, is its own kind of forgiveness. Tonight I stand on the porch looking out at the garden where Dad's orchids bloom again. The air smells of rain and soil clean alive. I whisper into the quiet, I forgive you, Mom. And I forgive myself, too. The wind moves through the leaves like an answer. I turn back toward the house, its windows glowing warmly against the dusk. It feels alive again, not haunted, not heavy, just home. I lock the door gently, the way my father used to, and smile. My father left me a house, but what he truly left me was a lesson that love without limits isn't love. It's surrender.